Chapter 1, Towards Civilization, Prehistory. Prehistory, we're going to talk about what that means. Through 3000 BC. We'll also talk about what BC is. So prehistory, before history. Well, let's look and see. And this is divided up, this chapter is divided up into 3 sections. Section 1, Understanding Our Past. Section 2, The Dawn of History. There's that word again, history. And the beginnings of civilization. Civilization, we're going to really talk about and focus on what this word means. For each of these chapters, we're going to be looking, in each section, we're going to be looking at some questions. And by the end of each section, I want you to make sure that you can answer all of these questions. If you can't, then you're going to have to go back, reread a little bit, or look over the notes a little bit more, listen to my charming voice some more. How are geography and history linked? We're going to look at what geography is, and we're going to look at what history is, and we're going to see how these two things are connected. How do anthropologists and archaeologists find out about early peoples? What the heck is an anthropologist? What is an archaeologist? I guess we're going to have to know what those people are in order to find out what they do. And how do historians try to reconstruct the past? This is what a historian does. All right, reconstruct, rebuild, be able to figure out what happened. They're like detectives. A detective wants to reconstruct a crime, reconstruct the crime scene. What happened here? Historians do the same thing. What happened here? All right, getting the definitions, the fun part of history. Geography is the study of people, their environments, and the resources available to them. So basically, we're looking at where people lived, what were their surroundings, resources like water and food. History uses written evidence to tell us how people lived in the past. Written. We know, hopefully we know, that all things that have happened throughout time have not been written down. But history can only rely on what has been written down. So we're going to see how we understand things that weren't written down, how we've tried to, again, reconstruct the past based on non-written evidence. Geographers, by showing how people lived in different times and places, these geographers have added to our knowledge of human history. 5 themes of geography. All right, here they are. Place, region, human interaction, location, and movement. This is how we break it down. Place is could be like location, but it's a little bit different. So when you see place and you see location, you're like, well, isn't that the same thing? Well, no. Place and location are different. And even region, you're like, well, isn't a region a place or a location? Well, let's look. Let's see what the differences of these things really are. There we go. So when we talk about place, we're talking about a general location, the physical features of an area. So for example, a mountain, a river, so something that's nearby, something that dominates the particular area. So place would be this place is rocky. This place is fertile. This place is floods. That's what they're talking about with place. What kind of economic activities could take place there? What religion is practiced there? To location, how is location different from place? Well, location is more, this is where it is. Longitude and latitude of this place. All right, that's location. It's in, those imaginary lines that you've talked about, where it is in relation to something else. For example, Athens was located on the eastern Mediterranean Sea. Mesopotamia was located in the Middle East. Mesopotamia is south of Greece. Are related too. It's not like, oh, one's completely separate from the other. Place, location, region. All of these things are in some ways connected. So place, near the river, in the mountains, in the desert. Location, 37 degrees north, 127 degrees east. longitude. That's location. And then region is like the world's divided up into separate places. You have the Middle East, for example, some of you have probably heard about. North Africa, Europe, Western Europe, the Caribbean, the Far East. Those are regions. Those are certain characteristics of people living in those places are common. Religions, political, economic, cultural things, all those are part of a region. Movement, obviously you should know what that means. People travel. People travel for trade. People travel escaping war. Sometimes they're called refugees. People just travel other places for more opportunity, economic opportunity. We're going to talk a little bit about immigration and why people emigrate from one place to another, the push-pull factors. And then, of course, human-environment interaction. How do human beings interact with their environment? They need to get food, they need to get water, they need to get shelter, they need to produce things to get money for their economy. How do they interact, and what types of things do they need to do or have in order to better interact with their environment? Getting back to those two occupations, anthropologists and archaeologists, what do? Well, anthropology is the study of the origins and development of people in their society. So where do people come from? How did people first develop? Some anthropologists study the origins of human life. Where did human life first begin? Where did it come from? And others focus on the variety of different human cultures. So why do we have different cultures all over the world? What separates them? What makes them different? And why do they become different? Archaeology is a form of anthropology. It's a specialized branch of anthropology. Archaeologists study artifacts. And an artifact is an object made by human beings. It's not a fossil. An artifact is not a fossil. An artifact is something that was made by human beings, some sort of a tool, a hatchet, a spear, a comb, things like that. Those are artifacts. By analyzing artifacts, archaeologists learn about the beliefs, values, and activities of early peoples. So what did these people believe in? Did they have a religion? What were their values? A value is like something that is important to you. And what kind of activities did they do? How did they hunt? How did they set up their camps? How did they build things? Those are the different activities of early people. All right. Historians rely primarily on written evidence to determine how people lived in the past. So if something's not written down, it's very difficult for a historian to learn about it. Recorded history began only about 5,000 years ago. So if you think about all the time that people are around here, the millions of years that people were here on Earth, we only have about 5,000 years of written records. So historians can only really go back 5,000 years. Before 5,000 years, you're looking at anthropologists and archaeologists to tell us what happened. This is actually from the horse's mouth, if you know what I mean. Straight from the people, writing down what happened. At some point in history, people said, hey, this stuff's important. People should remember this. We need to preserve this information. And so they started to write it down. And we're going to see, like with cuneiform and hieroglyphics, terms you should already be familiar with, how people began writing these things down. Today, historians study such evidence as photographs and film. So it doesn't just have to be written. It can be photographs, film, Snapchats. Those things don't really disappear. I know you think they do, but they don't. As well as written documents such as letters and tax records. So there's all sorts of sources today that historians can look back on and say, wow, this is what was going on at the time. This is what people believed. This is what people thought. This is what was important. Let's wrap up section 1 here. Which of the following is not an example? That not's a very key word. Clothing, weapons, rivers, tools. So if we look back at what our definition of artifact was, it is something that is man-made. All right, rivers obviously are not made by men. And finally, what do historians look at to learn how people lived in the past? A, they focused on the environments in which early people lived. B, they primarily look at written records. C, they primarily dig for artifacts, or D, they primarily look at landforms. Well, again, if you look back at our definition of a historian, historians look for the story, and a story is written. They look for the written story, and there it is. So they look at written records, and obviously rivers is not an artifact. That wraps up Chapter 1, Section 1, and it's going to be the end also of this video.